So I got drenched in the rain last weekend, and I came down with a cold. And since then, I've been trying to treat it, right? Whilst in the process of that, something occurred to me that um, everybody, to an extent, needs some sort of healing. Now, it may not be healing in the body, it may be healing in finances, it may be healing in business, at the workplace, in friendship, relationships, but everybody, to an extent, needs some sort of healing. Now, what I was really thinking about is, when does it cross over from being a sickness to an affliction? Like, a sickness is easier to cure, right? It may be a headache, it may be a cold, or it may be typhoid or malaria, whatever it is. And for those things, it's easier to just take meds and heal it. Now, when does it cross over into an affliction? Now, I was trying to look up the meaning, the meaning of affliction, right? I know what it means, but I wanted a deeper meaning to it, right? And most of the definitions I found were pretty much like sickness, until I found the one I was looking for, which was like a extreme suffering, right? So in my opinion, is like a prolonged sort of ailment, if that makes any sense. So a prolonged sort of ailment. Now, a good example of an affliction would be the lady with the issue of blood in the Bible. Now, please, if you're not familiar with their story, please refer to Google. Now, this lady had been bleeding, literally hemorrhaging, for 12 years. Again, that is an affliction in the body. People experience affliction in so many different ways, in various ways. So it could be affliction in finances. That will be like highs and lows in finances. Like, okay, money is good today, money is not good tomorrow, money is good next tomorrow, money is not. It could be highs and lows in business, if that makes any sense. So you set up a business today, it crashes in a year. You set up another business, it crashes in 2 years. You set up, and it's been prolonged. Does this make any sense? Now, the downside of an affliction is that it takes away your identity, right? And the affliction becomes your identity. Let me give you an example. See that lady with the issue of blood, right? Her name was never mentioned. She was identified by that affliction, right? So throughout the story was just the lady with the issue of blood. Now, a good example would be something like when somebody is saying, that guy that is always asking for money, that guy that is always broke. They won't mention the person's name. Do you understand? That guy that is always broke, always asking for money. Yeah, that guy, that guy. Oh, that lady, she's not married now. That woman, yeah. Men keep picking her up and dumping her. She doesn't have a husband or whatever it is. May we not be identified by affliction, right? So that's the downside of affliction. Now, what happens is that when that happens, like, a lot of people will start to advise you better go out and look for a solution to your problem. Don't just sit there and say you're praying. Go out. This thing has been going on for so long. Now, the problem with that is people start to run helter-skelter. Seeking for help, seeking for some sort of solution. Now, sometimes you're lucky. It's a 50-50 chance, right? Sometimes you're lucky and you find somebody that is able to, a genuine person that is able to provide some sort of solution. And then sometimes you're actually compounding to your problem. Do you understand? By running around, because you don't know if where you're going is actually genuine or not. You're actually compounding to it. Now, I always say to people that anything past the regular prayer, fasting, praise, blah, 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 it works in reverse for me. It works the opposite way. So I have to be extremely careful. I've known that since I was a young child, right? It works opposite for me. Let me give you a quick story. And I'm going to rush through this because I really don't want to take up the time. So there was a time an auntie of mine, like a distant auntie, she lost her husband, and then we're supposed to go pay her a condolence visit, right? However, her husband held some sort of traditional title in his hometown or whatever it is. Now, obviously, so we went to pay her a condolence visit, but we went on the wrong day, because the day we actually went was when they were performing like the traditional rites or whatever. As soon as I got there, I knew that I shouldn't be there. So I was like grumbling all throughout. Now, as you get there, you have to greet everybody. So sometimes some of them will, stretch forth their hands to shake you and everything. I just knew I shouldn't be there. I knew there was going to be trouble. So anyway, I didn't stay too long and I left. I went home. I went straight to bed, right? The next day I woke up. I am not kidding. My left arm was swollen. My eyes were this big, my throat was closed up, I could not speak. I knew it, so I had to call family and everything, and I was rushed to the hospital. So that's one story. Another one is that there was a time, so I was running, I had my restaurant at the time, right? So I took my office was there, so I took my laptop to work. Now I would always leave my laptop at work, right? And then when I'm leaving, I'll lock the office and give it to one of the staff and then go home. So they stole my laptop. I knew it was one of them, obviously, so I went out, I bought another laptop. After like about a month or two, they stole that as well. So one day I just said to them, you know what, I'm not paying you guys. I'm going to use all your salaries to buy a new laptop, except you fish out the person that stole my laptop, give me back my laptop. I don't want to know how you do it. So one of the staff, obviously the moment they had their salary, said, oh, I know this man, he prays, I won't mention the religion. So he just said, oh, he's very powerful, he prays, blah, 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 he will help us fish out the person. I said to them, I don't care. When you fish out the person, take them to the police station or whatever, but all I want is my laptop. So I locked them out and I locked my office. I was sitting there. So they had gone out, they had looked for the man or whatever. So later one of them called me and said, okay, we found the laptop, we found the culprit. I don't care, I just want my laptop, I don't want to know about it. So they knocked on my office door. So I thought they were going to give me my laptop. So as I opened the door, I saw the man and my staff. I collected my laptop and the man said, oh, I'm sorry, I just wanted to see you, I wanted to pray for you. I'm like, no, but it was an older man and everything. So I was like, Anyway, back and forth, out of respect, I was like, okay, fine, pray. So this man prayed. Now, at the time, I was seeing someone, right? Sorry, I'm trying to rush through this. I was seeing someone. So this person had come to pick me up from work. So now this is normally a very well-behaved person and everything. As I stepped out of my office, as I got into the car, an argument erupted. Now, he was displaying a behavior I had never experienced. It was like he was possessed. He just started shouting, arguing, oh, you kept me waiting, blah, blah, blah. He got so angry, like hitting the dashboard, and it was weird. I was just like, so after a while, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm definitely not going to sit in this car whilst you drive in this. Do you understand? So I got out of the car, and he was going to zoom off the car, and it was just by a fraction. He nearly ran the car into me. I just missed it by, I had to dive, and I couldn't get over that incident anyway. But then I remembered what had happened. Do you understand? So for somebody like me, I'm very, very careful, about things like that. So anything past the regular prayer, I don't do it, because sometimes you're actually compounding into the problem. The only possible solution to an affliction is exactly what the woman with the issue of blood did. And what did she do? She touched the hem of Jesus's garment and she was healed. And I know what you're thinking. That was then. That was that story. The garment is not available to us anymore. Where are you going to find the garment, right? But the garment is available. It is. What price are you willing to pay for it? Because you see, that woman, she paid a price. Let me explain. Now, in those days, a woman on her menstrual cycle, right, is deemed as unclean. So anything she touches, or even anyone she touches, becomes unclean. So what they would usually do is, for those few days of their cycle, they would be in isolation, right? Now imagine a woman that has been going through that for 12 years. At that point, she couldn't come in contact with family, friends, she couldn't touch anything. Imagine, how did she walk? She wouldn't have been able to walk, she would have been flat broke, right? Because obviously everything she touched, so she had to be in isolation, away from everybody. Bleeding during your menstrual cycle, you know that because of the loss of blood, naturally it makes people tired, right? If you dig deeper into that story, it was actually recorded that this woman was pretty much crawling, right? Now, the price she paid. Imagine if people had recognized her when she went amongst the crowd trying to get to Jesus, right? She would have paid with her life, because everybody she literally bumped into had become unclean. So if they had recognized her, she may have paid with her life. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to a concert and you see a mob trying to touch the artist or trying to get to the artist or whatever it is. You understand? If you've ever been to a concert, it's really rough. Imagine somebody crawling, trying to get through that crowd. So it wasn't even just the crowd. Even the disciples were trying to guard Jesus away from the crowd. So this woman not only went past the crowd, she actually even went past the disciples to touch the garment. If you think about it, everybody that Jesus healed, he pretty much went to them. With this woman, she went after him. I'm going somewhere with this. Please stay with me. Now, she literally went after him. Now, for Jesus, the most important man in the community, Jairus, had summoned him because his daughter had passed away, right? Think about if he was a regular person, maybe the president or the governor or a king or whatever has summoned that person, then some reject, because she was a reject at that time, do you understand? Some reject, some unclean person, flat broke, whatever was trying to get his attention, do you understand? But thank God he wasn't a regular person, because he actually stood and acknowledged her. Let me break it down properly. Now, thing is, where Jesus was going to Jairus's house to because his daughter had passed away, to wake up Jairus's daughter, is equally just as important as what that woman was going through. Let me break it down. Jairus's daughter was 12 years old. The woman had been going through 12 years of affliction. They are both females, right? And they both needed restoration back to life. Now, Jairus's daughter had already passed away. She could not be amongst the living anymore, right? So she needed a restoration back to a new life. This woman was alive, but she was pretty much considered dead, because for 12 years she had been in isolation by herself, so she could not be amongst the regular people, and she needed restoration to a new life. Now, he was going to wake up Jairus's daughter. By the time this woman got to Jesus, she had become a daughter. To become daughter or son, you have to have a semblance of that person, right? Now, to have a semblance of Christ, you have to know Christ. To know Christ, you have to study the word, read the Bible, fast, pray, sacrifice time with friends to praise and whatever it is, sacrifice food to fast, sacrifice toxic behaviors, toxic lifestyles, do you understand? To live in righteousness, to walk on a righteous path. It requires a lot of sacrifice. By the time this woman pushed through, she had pushed past rejection, pushed past mockery, past the naysayers, past the negative identity, past her affliction. By the time she got to Jesus, she had displayed enough faith and enough determination to be healed and made whole. Which means at that time she was equally just as important as who he was going to meet. Does that make any sense? Because he stood and acknowledged her. Initially, he had said to his disciples, somebody touched me. Who touched me? Now, amongst the mob, anybody could have touched me. But he knew that somebody had taught him in faith. He knew somebody had taught him in determination. He knew somebody had taught him in long suffering. He knew somebody had taught him. Somebody had made that sacrifice enough to be called daughter. He knew that, and he acknowledged it. And whilst the world had rejected her, he accepted her, because he said to her, daughter. He actually called her daughter. What I'm saying is this: I don't know what you're going through. Maybe sickness, maybe affliction, maybe you do need healing. But that garment she taught is still available to you. The question is, what price are you willing to pay for it? Namaste.